how's it going, guys, and welcome back. With it being a new year, we have a slew of upcoming monster taming games that we can look forward to both this year and beyond. That said, once in a while, I like to do these sort of top upcoming monster taming game lists where I go over which games I'm personally looking forward to the most, and it's kind of interesting to look back at some of the ones that I did for 2021, 2022, and even 2020, and see how much has changed during that time. Monster taming is such a deep and vast genre that whether you're a fan of games like Pokemon or Dragon Quest Monsters or Digimon or Shin Megami Tensei, there's likely something here that you'll find interesting and might want to take note of for yourself. Putting this list together was actually really hard because there's so many of these games that I'm looking forward to, so do remember that if you don't see a game that you're expecting to see on this list, it's not because I don't like that game or the game's no good. There's only so many you could fit into a top 10 list, and for me, these are my choices right now at this given time. Anyways, all of that being said, today we're going to be going over 10 monster taming games that I'm personally really excited for, and honestly, you should be too. So don't forget to subscribe for daily monster taming videos. Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Okay, so first up on the list, we have DokeV, and I already see you typing. Come on, Ed. That's one of the most visually appealing monster taming games out there with some really unique mechanics and a new feel all around. And while I totally agree, this would be higher on my list if it wasn't for the fact that the devs like to take these like 12-month breaks in between letting us know that they're alive. So while I think the game looks pretty cool and that it's a real-time combat monster taming game that features action-adventure at its core, I can't be fully invested in it just yet because originally it was going to release in 2022, then it was rebranded from an MMO to an action-adventure game, and we haven't really heard much about the game since. I really want to like this game, and there's a good chance that it'll end up higher on my list moving forward, but as of right now, I'm going to leave it at the number 10 spot because I'm excited for it, but I'm also a little bit cautious. Next up on this list is one of the earliest games I've ever covered, that being Kindred Fates, an open-world monster taming RPG that will incorporate real-time combat. Just like with DokeV, there's a chance that this game might move up on the list in the future. However, as it is right now, the game has been mostly focused on PvP content, at least as far as the alpha and upcoming beta are concerned, and I'm personally more interested in single player. The game seems to take inspiration from titles such as Zelda, Dark Souls, Pokemon, etc., and these are all obviously franchises that if you know me would know that I hold dearly. A lot of the premises and ideas behind the game are honestly really cool, like having the types function as playstyles, having more sapient kinfolk, sort of in the same vein as something like Digimon, the soft permadeath mechanic that exists within the game, the bonding mechanics that, I mean, aren't really going to be that big for me because all of my monsters are just fighting machines. But all of this to say is I am looking forward to seeing more of the single player content, which I know they've been working on a lot more extensively since alpha launch. I think the game has potential and could have major implications on the genre, but we'll have to see moving forward. Next up, we have Skyclimbers, a very visually appealing game, I should say. Now, this game isn't higher on my list, mainly because it's mostly a sandbox type game, which for me is interesting, but I've never been a huge player of sandbox titles. You'll notice that a lot of these games present on the list will come with them opinions, so I do hope that me saying that doesn't lead to my social execution, but despite that, Skyclimbers will offer a lot of player choice, allowing for you to either focus on the city building and management parts of the game, or allow you to sort of explore the world in a more nomadic way. The game basically feels like Minecraft meets Pokemon meets third-person action-adventure, and it's pretty cool. This title's going to have over 400 different species of Sentius in the game, which are the game's monsters, a procedurally generated and therefore basically infinite world to explore, and of course, it's going to exist in a multiplayer sandbox sort of setting. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how this game develops, and despite it not necessarily being my typical taste, with me being more of a story RPG or action RPG kind of guy, I still think this looks pretty nice, and I'm really looking forward to it. Next up, we have the sequel to a game that I haven't actually played just yet, but I do plan on playing once we get an official release date, but that being Disc Creatures World, which is kind of played up to be the Gen 2 of Disc Creatures, a GBC-style pixel art game that came out on Steam a few years ago. As you can see, they've overhauled the graphics into a more Game Boy Advance style aesthetic and have brought forth larger screens, allowing for both sets of monsters to be shown on screen, which for me is a big deal. Honestly, just following along with all of the clips that the developer's been sharing on Twitter over the past couple years and seeing how solid the pixel art and monster designs look, this 3-on-3 turn-based monster taming game has me pretty excited. Okay, I love platforming games and I love monster taming games. I love pixel art and I love collectathons. So with all of that being said, there's no surprise that I'm really excited for Mythcaller the Nightmare Shaman, which will be all of these put together into one really cool looking experience. The game acts as a 2.5D monster taming game where you can capture and utilize different monsters to battle against tough bosses, explore the world, and more. The game also has voice acting, which for me isn't necessarily a huge deal if it exists or not, but so far from what I've heard, the voice acting is actually pretty good, kind of funny, and it's really cool to see in a pixel art game. All in all, the game looks really cool, and I think you guys should definitely check it out because it deserves way more attention. By the way, I forgot to mention this, but all relevant games will have their social media linked below. Following a kind of similar format, and I guess you could honestly put this and Mythcaller on this list interchangeably, but that's Nanokin, a very interesting monster taming title where you can, again, platform in a 2.5D collectathon world, but this time the monsters themselves can be built using various mechanical parts. Furthermore, the game features tactical grid-based combat, which, if you asked me a year ago, wasn't really my forte, but after playing Digimon Survive and sort of getting introduced into that genre, I can't say I'm not excited for more. Again, just like Mythcaller, it's just got a beautiful aesthetic, a really cool concept, and something that you guys should be also looking forward to. Alright, now I know what you're thinking once you're seeing this gameplay on screen. Really, Ed? Another sandbox title, despite you saying you're not super into sandboxes. And again, let me just say, if Palworld was like the monster taming version of Horizon Zero Dawn, like there was an open world and a story and you followed sort of down that path, this would literally be number one for me, no questions asked. The game visually looks really good, which, to be honest, I don't care if a game is 2D or 3D as long as the aesthetic is nice. Like, good pixel art to me is just as good as good 3D, but I do think this game looks really good, and from a gameplay perspective, it just looks extremely interesting in that you can basically use these pals to fight alongside you in a third-person shooter where you could choose whether or not you want to be a good guy or a bad guy. There's a lot to this game that people might find off-putting, like the cruelty that you see, but I think that it acts as an excellent allegory for what the world would actually be like if these types of monsters existed within them. Some people feel that the realistic guns are also off-putting and they should be using laser guns, but I honestly have to disagree because I think that laser guns would take away from the idea that this type of brutality would in fact exist. And this game has a lot of aspects to it that I think speak volumes. Anyways, I've been really excited about this game. I think it's going to be a good time, and I think that it'll probably be even more enjoyable if we do some multiplayer stuff, so I'll definitely keep you guys updated for what the plan is once we get a release date for this game. Okay, so the final three on this list were extremely hard to actually order because to me, all of these titles are things that I'm extremely hyped for, and I think you'll see why. So first up, as you can see on screen, is the new Digimon RPG being created by Dragonrod Art, which, if you don't know, they're an extremely talented fan game developer and the person behind Digital Tamers Reborn and the upcoming Digital Tamers 2. As I've stated on multiple occasions, I'm personally more of an RPG kind of guy, so when I saw this new fan game in the works, which at the time was unnamed, I was absolutely captivated by it. The title was recently officially revealed at our Monster Taming Direct, given a name, that being Digimon Story Shadow Over the Past, and we'll have you exploring a seemingly Digimon adventure-inspired digital world where you can encounter various Digimon and fight them in turn-based combat. I'm really looking forward to more news about this game moving forward, and while I'd usually be a little bit hesitant towards putting a fan game on the list with a bunch of unique IPs, I think that Dragonrod's game really deserves a spot here, not only because Digimon fan games are far less abundant than something like Pokemon fan games, but because of the sheer quality and dedication that's going into this project. Next up, we have Lumentale, which is undergoing its Kickstarter campaign, which will be linked below, but it's basically a story-driven monster taming RPG that takes place in a 2.5D world that looks absolutely stunning. So far, the monster designs I've seen are really solid in this game, and it features 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and even 4-on-4 combat. And the cherry on the cake is that it's being developed by the Pokemon Xenoverse developers, who already have a track record of making a successful monster taming RPG. As of the time I'm putting this video together, the Kickstarter hasn't gone live yet, so more information might have come out since then, so I do recommend checking it out, but I decided not to put this on the list as number one because it is still early development, and the game I did put at number one I am pretty much equally hyped for, but the state of development and what we know about it is a lot more extensive. That's not Lumentale's fault, that's just how development cycles work. Speaking of which, number one, and I'm sure you guessed it by now, is Cassette Beasts, which is releasing sometime this year, and in many ways will revolutionize various aspects of the genre. The game has its own unique take on the type system, which allows for buffs, debuffs, and even transmutations. Rather than simple multipliers, you have 2-on-2 combat, which can result in fusion, which is algorithmically created, allowing over 14,000 types of fusion combinations. You have a semi-open world with this really nice 2.5D aesthetic. You have some platforming elements. The way the shinies work is completely unique in that you get randomized types and movesets. The game features a unique stamina system where instead of losing stamina as you go, you actually slowly gain AP, so you can use these stronger attacks more later on, and so much more. The game, honestly, in my opinion, is the very definition of innovation in the genre, and it's really interesting because at a surface level, you might just look at the game and assume it's a Pokemon-like title but with doubles, but that could not be further from the truth. But yeah, there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 upcoming monster taming games. A lot of this list can and will probably change as time moves on. Certain games might move up or down or whatever, but this should give you a good idea of which games I'm personally looking forward to, and therefore will be spending a lot of time making content on when they do come out. The genre has expanded so much since I started doing this in late 2019, and it's really crazy to think that I went from covering what was essentially 4 core games to having an entire segment dedicated to news each week because there's so much of it. Now we have an entire direct presentation where developers will actually submit stuff to me, and honestly, it's been crazy, and despite all of that, there's so much I have to learn, and the genre still has so much room to grow, and I'm really thankful for the last 3 years, guys, and I really hope that this year will be just as fun as the last. All that being said, if you want to follow me on this monster taming journey, definitely subscribe to the channel. I put out new videos every day. You can check out my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, all links below. Special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Drogo, Stark Persona, and Exodus, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.